Hello, guys. Welcome to a new episode of NATO, the podcast. Welcome to NATO headquarters. Today, we'll talk more about the US elections, a topic that's going to keep us up for the next couple of weeks, at least till November 3rd, but probably even longer than that. Today, I'm very happy to introduce once again my co-host from Britain, from the UK, Emmanuel Jensen, who is again very excited to talk about all this information on the current polling that he's been following every day like a lunatic. But it's always good to have you on board and to have you here with us, as informed as you are. Hi, Manny.
Pleasure. Yeah, absolute pleasure.
And I'm also very happy we have two guests today, Andrew Schaeffler and Kareem Rifai, students for Biden from the University of Michigan. So today we're going to talk a bit with you guys about what's your view on the current state of the elections, on the polling nationally, and of course in Michigan. We want to have a very personal view on this. And I'm very, very happy you guys took the time. Over there, it's quite a lot earlier in the day than it is here in Europe right now. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, so right now, if we look at the polls, we have Biden very much in front, and we've been talking about this in our last episode as well, how what areas are there actually for the Trump campaign to make points, to maybe close the gap a bit. And Manny, you pointed this out last time, that even on the question of security or maybe law and order, where maybe the Republicans thought they would gain on that, apparently Biden has more favorable views by voters.
Yeah, if you look at a poll done by CBS, I think it was this week, it was a dead heat for who makes me feel safer in Wisconsin, which is actually in Kenosha, even after Trump has been beating the drum of law and order, which is really, really fascinating. I think that's really where I want to sort of lead, actually, Andrew and Kareem. How does it look? How do you see the race from your perspective? So start with Andrew. How do you see it?
Yeah. Well, I think, at least at the moment, in my opinion, I think that it's going to be a very close, not as large of a margin as some are predicting, a very close Biden win. I think that in the states of Wisconsin, Arizona, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, if Biden's able to win 3 of those, he's able to win the election. And I think that when you look at those states, not only is Biden winning in the polls and consistently, I don't really think that that's a very good measure. I think that when you look at other things such as 2018 turnout, all of those states elected Democratic officials, like statewide, whether that be Senate, governor, and by large enough margins that it's not, simply a, people turning on Trump in the midterms. I think that when you look at all of that combined with, things like down ballot polling, opinion polling in terms of what you were talking about with who do you think makes you feel safer, I think that, those are going to be states that if Biden doesn't win, he's coming close in. And I also think that, when you start to look at, some either, polls, opinion, things like that in states like North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, I don't particularly think that those are going to be states that Biden wins. But I think that when no state is within a vacuum. And, if Biden's coming within 2 points in, North Carolina, chances are in, states like Michigan and Wisconsin and Arizona, they're going to be closer. So, I definitely think, though, that one final thing I'll say on this is I think that, honestly, the main thing is going to be whether or not, Democrats are able to get out the vote via mail-in votes and, via basically everything before Election Day. Because when you look at pretty much every poll, you have an overwhelming majority of Democrats who say that they want to vote by mail or vote early or whatnot. And as opposed to a lot of Republicans who say, no, I want to vote on Election Day.
Yeah.
And so I think that, if Democrats aren't getting out the vote and aren't doing everything they can to, reach out to people and say, here's how you return your ballot. You need to return your ballot. I think that's going to be, honestly, in my opinion, one of the main ways that this election could swing to Trump and the Republicans. And I think that, that's going to be the key. So basically, I guess to sum it up, I think that this election is Biden's to lose, but I think that it can be very, very, very easily lost, especially when it comes to returning the ballots.
Got you. I'd love to pick up more on those points in just a second, but Kareem, what do you think?
I agree with a lot of what Andrew said, but I think I have a little bit of a more optimistic view. I honestly think Biden will win by bigger margins than what kind of pundits are kind of thinking.
Wow.
Absolutely.
And,
you mean?
When you look at how Hillary Clinton performed, especially in states like, Michigan and Florida, the margins were so small. And Biden is polling even better than her right now, and generally has been polling better than her for a really long time. And Michigan polls are insanely good right now. It's to the point where, Andrew, I don't know if I'm remembering correctly, but they started lessening advertising in Michigan. That's how big the margin is. So hopefully I don't look back at this in November and kind of cringe. I'm an optimist. Some things that are kind of worrying to me, though, I think, is specifically Florida. A poll came out recently about the share of Latino vote per Trump or Biden, and it was pretty abysmal for Biden. And I think this is something that Democrats are not looking at as severely as they should. I think that Trump has a really, really, really strong sway with many Venezuelan and Cuban voters, especially with his, hawkishness towards Venezuela and towards Maduro. He's objectively taken a harsh stance. Whether or not it's the correct stance or a coherent stance is a different story. But from the posture of a Venezuelan or Cuban in Florida, as the polls indicate, Trump has been kind of doing more of what they want in terms of the Venezuela situation. So that's where I really worry, specifically, is Florida, because that's a really important voting block. And I think Florida is really essential to winning the election. But when it comes to the Midwest, I have no doubt in my mind Michigan will go Biden. Hopefully Wisconsin, and then Minnesota is kind of up in the air. But
I really want to pick you up on the 2 points. I think the first point is Andrew, what do you mean by close? What do you think? What are we talking at a state level, at a national level? Do you think it's a Biden win, but say 4 or 5 points? Biden win 3-4 points? Biden, what are we looking at here?
I would probably, at least in my opinion, I think that just in terms of electoral votes, probably Biden by about, at least in my opinion, I don't know. I honestly wouldn't say more than 15 to 20. I still remain confident. And I think that there are many, many ways for him to get to 270, and I think that that's one of the severe advantages that Biden has over Trump, in the sense that, say Biden loses Wisconsin, there's still a pathway for him to gain those votes back in, a state like maybe North Carolina or things like that. So I guess, I think on the state level, at least in Michigan, my prediction as of now is Biden by about 4.5 points or so. But I guess more so just when I meant close, I meant in terms of electoral vote. And so I think that, like I said, I think there are many pathways that Biden can get to, and, obviously go over 200, the magic 270 electoral votes. But, I also think that there's still, like I said, many ways for that not to happen. And so, I think that was more so what I meant in that terms. But like I mentioned, many ways that he could get to 270.
The other point I think both of you raised was really interesting. No state exists within a vacuum. Where a lot has been made right now about Minnesota and the possibility of Nevada as well, perhaps going to Trump. And I suppose you could demographically link some elements of Arizona to elements of Nevada, elements of California perhaps as well, and elements of Minnesota with elements of the larger Midwest and Michigan, Wisconsin, and so on. How do you two feel about those? The other side of the coin. How do you two feel about the states that Trump could Trump pull a surprise? Could he win those? How likely do you think those are to win? So Minnesota in particular.
I don't know. Polls are kind of indicating different things, especially on Minnesota. But I don't know. I feel like, Amy Klobuchar is a great surrogate for Minnesota. Yeah. She's a really strong centrist Democrat who has been out to bat for Biden for a pretty long time now. And I think that the Midwest has been kind of adversely affected a lot by Trump's decisions, especially like the voting blocks that voted, some of the voting blocks that voted for Trump in our states, especially farmers and manufacturing, like manufacturing jobs. So I'm hoping that those votes will flip. But again, like I think Michigan is a shoe-in for Biden. Like as long,
it was 11,000 votes last time.
That's it was. The margin was extremely small last time, and now the polls are indicating him up by like 8 points.
Yeah. So like, if you follow the state polls closely, is there a clear distinction on who's leaning which way in terms of occupation? So can you take a look at the current polls and see, okay, farmers are leaning toward Trump. I don't know, academics are leaning toward Biden in terms of the broader job market. Is there polling like that? I haven't seen
a lot of it is anecdotal, but you can see polling by race and by college degree.
And by area, maybe. Yeah, college degree,
That gives you kind of an indication. Like, obviously, it's not going to be across the board, like people with college degrees are working one job and people without a college degree are working another job, but it kind of gives you a sense of where people at. So there's like usually like a race breakdown and then a like college degree breakdown.
And that's where I feel pretty, if I'm the Biden camp, if you're Jen Malley-Dillon and you're looking, okay, I've got to flip at least, I've got to hold on to Clinton 16 and I've got to flip, plan A, just flip the Midwest again. So Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. The suburbs narrowly, right, went to Trump last time. But this 2018, Democrat, right? The suburbs flipped. Is this also true in the Midwest, where we had a flip and Democrats did well?
Yes. Yeah. In 2018, there was in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, in like areas, suburban, wealthy areas that had been Republican strongholds for decades flipped to Democrats. And I also will make the note, since we talked previously about, the distinction between some of the different wings of the Democratic Party. Every single candidate that flipped a congressional district was a moderate Democrat. And when you're looking at these districts, I think that that's another important thing to note, in the sense that between the two elections, in that for example, in Michigan, we have, for example, the 11th district has, obviously very specific, but, is very, very well off, cities like Birmingham, Troy. That seat had been in Republican hands for, at least 2 decades.
It's a Slotkin now, right?
Well, that was Haley Stevens.
Right.
Same thing with Alyssa Slotkin's district, which is a little bit north of here. These are districts that, that sort of, kitchen table issues, advocacy and issues. That's what it means. That, that's who this means the most to. And those were the districts that flipped. And, you saw that in Pennsylvania, in, some of the suburbs with, the elections of people like Congresswoman Susan Wild, Mary Gay Scanlon. Those were, people who flipped districts that had been literally in Republican hands for decades. And so I think that it was that, same approach that, I think that in many ways Biden emphasizes and has always had, that, those are the issues that resonate with these people, which is another reason why I'm really, why I feel a little bit more optimistic, in the sense that, these are candidates that have ran on the same issues that Biden has been running on and will run on. And, that's, like I said, additional reasons. So yeah.
Let's wrap that part of the discussion up with saying, okay, so the state of the race is advantage Biden. It's Biden to lose, but it could be lost, is probably where you guys would have it at.
For sure.
Right.
Sure.
Okay.
It's not a runaway by any means.
That does fill me with hope. Did you think, last question, did you think we'd be in this position, come when New Hampshire, right? When New Hampshire came in and Biden lost, did you think we'd be in this position in September?
That's like such a funny story. So
okay.
So Andrew and I started this org in like October of 2019.
Wow.
So like very early in the primaries, like we were on the boat very early. We're one of like maybe the first 5 students for Biden chapters in the country. And we've grown to be the like first or second biggest. So we were on the train very early, and those early states were very discouraging, to say the least.
You can say that again.
Mayor Mike Bloomberg really threw a wrench in everything. So we were like very, kind of low spirits for like a few week period, but we stuck with it. And it was South Carolina when, all the faith was renewed. Because in the end, like Iowa and New Hampshire, like the amount of, votes that you get from that is kind of inconsequential in the bigger picture. But, pundits always say Iowa kind of indicates where everything is going to go. But clearly that was not the case. Pete Buttigieg won and dropped out. So like,
and Ted Cruz won for the Republicans.
Exactly. It's just punditry where they're like, oh my God, Iowa is everything, blah, 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 blah. Like,
So I think what's really fascinating as well, and it's something that, just sadly because of COVID, we can't really do ourselves, is what's it like on the ground? How comparable are your anecdotes with your conversations with colleagues, friends, friends of friends with 2016? Does it feel different? Is there? I'd love to know that.
I mean, it's 4 years back. Have you been active that long, the two of you? I mean, you're in college now. I don't know, how active have you been in politics 4 years ago? And how active are you now? I'm actually quite interested to know. Do you actively campaign? Do you do events on campus, off campus? Do you do door-to-door campaigning, stuff like that? I'm curious to know, how does election campaigning work in Michigan, and how far are you guys involved in that?
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll go for the 2016 question first, and then I'll I can like segue into that, because I think at least for me they're somewhat related. I think that, obviously 2016, I had very little clue what was going on. But I think that within the, circles of people who I know who are politically engaged, I think the first thing is that in 2016, people were a lot more confident, but not just, within their opinions, within the fact that Hillary Clinton didn't make a visit to Michigan until 2 months before the election.
Unbelievable.
They had very few staff on the ground in terms of both party staff, like Michigan Democratic Party, and then like also assistance from outside groups. And so that has completely changed. The Michigan Democratic Party is, I believe, one of the largest coordinated campaigns in the country right now. Biden has been here, I think, just over the past few months, 2 times virtually, and then he was just here in Warren, which is like Macomb County, basically Bellwether County, crucial county, talking about the things that Hillary Clinton simply did not talk about, buying American, standing up for manufacturers. And so I think that that's at least the main thing, the main difference that both I've heard and I've seen in terms of like the party apparatus and things like that.
Thank God.
Yeah. And then I guess sort of segueing that into like some of the things that we're doing and have done. And so at least our group in particular, both, during the primary, obviously, the main thing for us was just, more so convincing people to, at least consider Biden, if not vote for Biden. At many points, we were, it was like Kareem said, very lonely. So at least it was like, please don't hate Biden, like just, so that was, the main thing during the primary, pretty much doing everything from making phone calls, texting. We actually helped run a like Iowa, it was basically, they called it a satellite Iowa caucus, which was basically for registered Iowa Democrats who are living in Michigan. And so we were like the de facto people from the Biden campaign there, which was, pretty cool. All sorts of other events, and kind of in the new virtual space, we're doing all of that, plus a little bit more things like, relational organizing, where, there's, an app from the Biden campaign where basically you can text friends, family, things like make sure they're registered to vote, especially for college students, make sure they've changed their address. That way, when they get their absentee ballot application, it goes to the right address, things like that. Pretty much, anything.
Quite a lot.
Quite a lot of stuff. And then, so that's at least like what our group does. I know both Kareem and I have done a ton of other, politically involved things, just within like campaigns and whatnot. But that's sort of like what our group kind of does. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something. So Kareem, you take it away.
I mean, yeah, you covered a lot of it. I mean, I think I can just maybe add something in for like the 2016 to 2020 kind of difference. I think 2016, the attitude was very much run away for Clinton. And there was also negativity as well, a lot of like third party kind of sentiment as well. I think it was like, I actually just wrote an article on this, but I think third parties got the largest vote share since Ross Perot. So it was just like it was like a lot of negativity about like very, very, very negative attitudes about both candidates, and a lot of kind of like posturing towards voting third party. And I think this time it's, there's some, negative things that people like to say about Biden, but I think generally he's a lot more well-liked by the Democratic electorate than Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
And I think, I just wrote an article about kind of the relative weakness of the third party this year. Joe Jorgensen is
it's going to be a big factor. I mean, the whole point that last time this sentiment of people being frustrated and thinking about voting third party, that was a big factor for Trump as well. I mean, he was a candidate that ran on drain the swamp. That was about, everyone in Washington is a crook. And I'm the one who's going to clean up. I mean, how many people leaning to vote for third party thought that was a good message to vote for? So this is going to be a factor this time, definitely.
Yeah. But I think kind of what polls have been showing is Jorgensen and Hawkins are just not even closely polling to the same, as Stein and Johnson were. And Johnson, I think he's a clown personally. But was he a pretty decent candidate? I think the Johnson-Weld ticket was, he's a former governor. Weld was a former governor. Both kind of respected politicians. And now you have a Clemson University professor, and her vice president is a 38-year-old podcaster. And his nickname is literally originates from the My Little Pony movie. His name is Spike Cohen. Yeah, it's just it's unbelievable. And same with the Green Party ticket. Howie Hawkins, I think, has run for office over 30 times. Don't quote. Literally at least over 10 or 20 times. And his vice presidential candidate is this really low profile Green
Okay.
Party activists that like
Right.
no one has ever heard of.
Right.
Do
Okay.
an episode on that topic alone. So
That would be-
sometime
so-
sometime in the next week. This is amazing.
Right. So I think Kareem, I'm seeing the same thing. You know, Biden's hitting 50, right?
Mhm.
Consistently, Biden's hitting 50 plus. I don't think Hillary really hit 50 plus in polls
No.
that were of the same quality, you know, because now we wait for education and they're more accurate and so on. Biden is hit, and I think that just points to the fact that there are fewer undecideds out there or fewer third parties. I think that's
Right.
thank God, you know. For
So let's talk a bit about Michigan in particular. What are the topics? I feel very interested. I'm very interested in that topic from your guys' perspective. What are maybe state topics that have been coming into the election campaign? For one, you have a Senate race going on. Talk about that a bit. About the incumbent, Peters from the Democrats, trying to run against who is it? Who's running for the Republicans?
John James.
James.
John James, right? Yeah, and like, what are the topics there, and that maybe drifting that. Are those the same topics that drift over into the presidential election? Are there Michigan-specific topics that have made their way into this election this time? Talk about that a bit. I'm very interested.
I guess I'll start.
You
and
can
then
take it,
Yeah,
Mr. Gary
go ahead,
Peters
go ahead,
III.
Andrew.
Yeah. So I think that one of the biggest things in Michigan is like manufacturing in the auto industry. And, those were a lot of things that I think Biden's a heck of a lot stronger than Clinton on. I think the first thing that I've noticed that I've seen is a very big deal, especially in areas like Detroit, Macomb County, is the fact that, the amazing auto recovery under Obama Biden, and the fact that Biden literally led the Recovery Act and came to Michigan, 10 plus times, to help with that and to pretty much get the auto industry back on its feet. And so I think that, especially in those areas, those are very, very key issues. I think that when you look at the Senate race down ballot, you've got a lot of things I think a lot of the same things, when it comes to manufacturing and, along those lines. But I think that another major issue is like the Great Lakes. And I think that at least, I guess Great Lakes and environmental issues in general. I think that, that's something that, at least I know Michiganders obviously, pride themselves on the Great Lakes and whatnot. So I think that that's a very key issue. And I think that, that's been something that's been emphasized a lot, especially by Gary Peters, has been running ads about some of the bipartisan work that he did to secure funding for the Great Lakes. And I think that, any of the attacks, or I think the majority of the attacks, I would say, on Gary Peters are, and I mean, somewhat rightfully so, in the sense that, he's not a very well-known senator in the state, which I might, I would argue is kind of a good thing. But a lot of the attacks are, surrounding the fact that, he's been an invisible man, or, he has been, hasn't done a lot, which is simply untrue. And Gary Peters has, pushed back on some of these things. But, I think that a lot of these things, and then obviously, issues that, were emphasized in 2018 that, really, hit the mark with Michigan voters, things like, affordable health care, the environment, like I mentioned, those are, those are issues that, candidates ran on, Biden's running on.
Yeah, I think they're really good turf for Biden, right? Like 2018, Paul Begala said it, when Democrats talk about healthcare and social security, they win.
Yeah.
And I think Biden is really comfortable on that territory. And I think he's also really comfortable on the manufacturing territory as well, right? I mean, the sense I get is this is Scranton Joe, you know what I mean? This is someone who can relate to manufacturers. We all know someone. I think this is really relatable. I'm glad, reveal my cards. I'm a proud Democrat. I will be voting for Biden. I voted for Biden in the primaries. That's what fills me with joy, is that we have someone who can really recognize key voters' concerns, and that Hillary Clinton, I think, frankly, couldn't. on manufacturing. So that's really, thank God that that's happening on the floor. And
So,
Kareem, yeah, sorry, man.
yeah. So on that, and Kareem, I don't want to take that away. So feel free to also give your opinion on your topic. But then maybe think about, my next question would be like, what are the key issues you guys feel strongly about in the in the democratic, in the democratic program? For if worst comes to worst, and you have oh, okay, I phrased that wrong. So if you have a blue wave, and the Democrats take the White House, and they take the House and Congress, and they take the Senate and Congress, and you have all that majority, what are the main things you guys expect him to get done, and what would be the key issue where you say, okay, if they don't, that is a topic I feel so strongly about. If they don't get it done with a majority like that, I that would really hurt my confidence in supporting the Democrats, because this is what we're looking at maybe for the next 2 years at least.
Right. For me, I'm like primarily a foreign policy voter. I'm Syrian American, so that's like really, very important to me. And there's a lot of struggle, I think, between a lot of diaspora communities, like I was talking about earlier, Venezuelans and Cubans, along with, Syrians, this issue of grappling with, has Trump's foreign policy in our specific regions been more effective than, the Obama-Biden administration? And, the Trump administration's approach to foreign policy is so sporadic and all over the place that one day something good will happen, one day something bad will happen. I mean, like, for example, Syrians, anti-Assad Syrians, and, anti-regime Iranians celebrated the death of Soleimani in January. And then Trump does crazy things, like yesterday, I think he retweeted a video of Tucker Carlson denying the Syrian chemical weapons attacks. So it's like the bag is so mixed that I have very little faith in a second term Trump-Pence administration having a coherent foreign policy when it comes to Syria, and also, other regions in the world that I care about. So I don't think that Biden is necessarily like an amazing foreign policy mind, but I'm hoping that his administration doesn't repeat the same mistakes that the Obama-Biden foreign policy team made. I mean, Syria was such a blunder. It's like a stain on like American 21st century foreign policy. It's really just, it's a huge stain, I think, on Obama's legacy, even though I think he was such a great, president. It's something that I personally will never forget. Many Syrians will never forget. And I think history will never forget. And so
it shouldn't.
I completely agree with you, Kareem, on that. On foreign policy, that's the maybe the biggest mistake Obama did with the Syrian situation. And where I think, he didn't have to run for a re-election, but that would have hurt him in the next in the coming up election.
This is my sort of wider question, guys, is that like the Democratic Party's old coalition, right? You've got like working class, you've got the way Robert Kennedy, right, is able to go to a college, talk to college students. He's able to go to Massachusetts, okay, that's home state, fine, but talk to the middle class. He's able to go and go down to talk to the fruit pickers in California and so forth, and go show solidarity to them. He's able to talk to racial justice. Democratic Party's coalition was successful. New Deal, you have the Midwest successful. But now there are states where the Democratic Party simply can't compete, or simply isn't competing. The Dakotas, for example. How do the Democrats get to 60 in the Senate? Because as I see it, I'm not sure they can get past 54. How do you get to 60? What sort of things do you need to talk about? How do you build that party that can do it?
That's such a question. I don't know. I think that this election is kind of going to be a big determiner of the trajectory of both parties in the future. And I think that one thing, as like I can speak on as a first generation American, is that the Democratic Party is kind of losing its grip on the immigrant voting bloc, like pretty severely losing its grip on the non-Mexican immigrant voting bloc,
Right.
because Mexicans pretty down the board, I think, especially, you know, Southern California, just because of the environment. You know, they trend really blue, but non-Mexican voting groups like, you know, Venezuelans, Cubans, Syrians, Iranians, all of these growing demographics that, you know, in and of itself are not huge, but, you know, are potential swings in lots of states like Florida, are just not really responding to the Democratic message as strongly as they could be, even though the Democrats are supposed to be the party for immigrants, you know. And I think that the Republicans have a huge, like, not a huge task, but a huge opportunity to grab up a lot of those voters, which I think they're doing by, you know, posturing more anti-authoritarian, posturing towards the more kind of abandoning the like super harsh Tea Party xenophobic rhetoric that they embraced for a really long time. So that's what I worry. I honestly think the coalition is not increasing in the way that it should be. And I think with the current trajectory, it's not going to increase. I think with the way things going, 60 Senate seats just like never gonna happen.
Okay.
And I think that comes a lot with conceding to the left of the party a little bit more. You know, moderates are voting Biden, a lot of them, to get Trump out of office, not because they're like a huge fan of Biden's policies. So
I'm sorry, I think that's, you know, I think I think you're exactly right, and I think the tendency is to look at this as states operate within a vacuum, and that each one, you know, with the state border, they, you know, behavior starts and ends. So something that fascinates me, and I'd love to pick this up, Andrew, is compare Michigan to Ohio. Ohio is better for Trump than Michigan. Why, Andrew? What's going on?
Yeah. I think first and foremost is the demographics. I think that when you look at, you know, key groups like African-American voters, those, you know, that's always been, you know, very strong demographic for Biden in the primary. Obviously, general election, you know, and I believe that there's a much higher share in Michigan than Ohio. Ohio is, I believe, much more of a has much more rural land, or at least, you know, either urban or suburban. And I think that that's, you know, a very key thing. Other than that, I mean, I don't have any magical wisdom, but I think that, you know,
maybe let's compare on that. You know, I get a sense that in Ohio, the state more or less moving actually toward the Republican Party in a lot of elections, definitely. And to my knowledge, a lot of that is with the loss of jobs, especially like in the mining and manufacturing area. And, you know, Michigan had the same problem with losing jobs in manufacturing and industry, which, you know, brought down big cities like Detroit. Very much so. It's a very, very sad story in how the decline of, I hear it's going back up again, but for a long time, you know, this Detroit has been this synonym in the US about dying cities. And so how come, so if that made voters turn toward the Republicans in Ohio that much, why hasn't it done the same in Michigan? Or is it really going that much better now with the automobile sector?
I mean, I think definitely in part the, you know, the automobile industry, that Michigan, I do think it is. And I think that a lot of that, even if it's not going better per se, from the, you know, recession until now, has been a massive improvement. And that obviously, you know, comes along with, you know, more jobs in Michigan that, you know, aren't just, you know, in the plants, but, you know, things. And that's honestly, I think, another reason why some of the suburbs are, you know, trending blue in Michigan. The fact that you have, you know, automobile jobs that aren't, you know, the more executive, the more managerial jobs, you know, those people realizing that for that industry, you know, the Democrats and, you know, particularly the Obama administration and some of the, you know, things that they did with the Recovery Act, you know, are good policy and are helpful. And I think that when you look at, like you mentioned, some of the, you know, different industries in Ohio and Michigan. For example, like the energy industry, we don't really have a lot of that in Michigan as opposed to, Ohio, especially, Southern Ohio. And, I mean, personally for me, I would prefer to have, a safe environment than hold on to some, coal voters' votes. But I think that, when it comes down to it, some of the policies that the Democrats are pushing on climate aren't the most favorable among those voters. Then again, I mean, like I said, I definitely want to qualify that with, I don't think that we should be, going for people's votes over, the safety of the planet. But I think that, when you do start to look at some of those industries, especially in like places like Ohio, West Virginia, the Appalachian area, the Democrat policies by their very nature are contrary to what those people, what their lifestyle is. And so,
So that's why I think another issue that on the sort of state level that I think Ben and I have been tracking very interesting, we had a debate amongst ourselves, was the effect of law and order and the effect of how much is Trump able to move the needle at a local level, do you perceive, with law and order messaging, with the rising, how much does that move the needle? How much does it affect things?
I mean, personally, I think that that is one of the other pathways that Donald Trump is able to win. I think that there are some, at least in the ads that I've seen, there have been some, compelling ads where they might be dishonest. They are dishonest, don't get me wrong. But they are able to craft the message in such a way that, you see, and now obviously Biden, Kamala Harris, they've all condemned, the violence. They've condemned wherever it comes from, including, naming Antifa. That was, the big thing a while back, they won't say it. But, I think when it comes down to it, for some voters, the fact that, oh, the mob could be coming to me, or, obviously, now looking at, that might sound like, oh, that sounds stupid. But, coming up to the election, some of these voters who are concerned, not even necessarily about the fact of like, oh, no, I don't want, a fire in my town. There have been some ads that have been put out of, business owners in, places like Kenosha, places, like Minneapolis, talking about, this is what will happen in Biden's America. And I think that, on a surface level, it's very easy to say, oh, haha, this is Trump's America. What are they doing? But there are people out there who will say, wow, what if this really is, as opposed to the strong, law and order message from Donald Trump. And so I think that that's, I don't know if that will particularly swing the needle. And I personally think that, when it comes down to it, that's not the main issue on a lot of voters' minds. It's coronavirus or the economy. But I think that among some voters who, per se, even in my personal conversations, when I've been like making calls for the Michigan Democratic Party or something like that, I've talked to a host of people who say, well, honestly, I'm going to vote for Biden because I can't stand Trump, but I'm voting Republican all the way down the ballot. I'm a Republican voter. And so, in those conversations, that sort of messaging is, the type where those voters could potentially be swayed over. And I think that, there are a lot of voters out there that, have that mindset, especially in, suburban voters. Their one, main concern with Donald Trump is like, oh, maybe I support his policies, maybe he's pro-life too, but, something about, morals, character, or, something along those lines.
So, yeah, let me, so we need to, we're running out of time for one episode. There's so much to talk about. Let me ask the two of you, what did you think about the VP race before the vice presidential idea? Because I know that Joe Biden met with your governor, Gretchen Whitmer, and she was one of the names going around that might be a possible VP candidate for the Biden campaign. So, Kareem, what did you think about the idea, and how do you see the choosing Kamala Harris as the running mate What is that? People obviously read that on the news that their governor from Michigan is a VP candidate. Would have given the Biden campaign a big boost in Michigan, definitely. And then on the other hand, not picking her but picking Kamala Harris, was that something that disappointed people in Michigan or not? So Kareem, what do you think about that? And then Andrew as well. So I think that's a good question to talk about.
Yeah, I'm fine with the Kamala Harris pick. I think she's a perfectly fine pick.
Okay.
I don't think Gretchen would have been a very strategic pick. Michigan was already going to trend Biden regardless. I think what would have been a much more strategic pick was Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota. Really essential state, and I think if she was VP, it would be won pretty easily. I also think that her policies kind of align more with Biden, and I think that she was a really great possible choice. Unfortunately, like with everything that happened in Minnesota, she kind of got written off as a candidate very quickly, and she stepped down. But I really would have liked to see her as VP, but I'm perfectly happy with Kamala Harris. So.
Kareem, you talked about being a foreign policy voter. The big, if I were to say to you then, Susan Rice, was that better than Kamala Harris? Or was that?
No, I really dislike Susan Rice.
Okay.
I'm really not a fan of Susan Rice. Yeah.
Okay.
She had a pretty abysmal take on Syria as well. And she was one of the main actors that kind of dissuaded intervention in Syria. So yeah, not a really big fan of seeing a Biden administration with one of the actors who kind of messed up Syria.
Yeah, no. And Andrew, Andrew and Kareem, sorry, Ben, I'm going to have to ask two questions for you. Okay, number one, who was your dream vice president candidate, both of you? And number two, give me your prediction for who do you think? I'm going to ask you some dates. You tell me the winner. And then I'd love to know what your predictions are for the Michigan Senate. So, like, Kareem, please tell me your dream pick was Klobuchar.
I mean, yeah, from the contenders,
okay.
Klobuchar. If I could pick any politician,
your dream pick. I'm interested. So let's hear that.
I would have loved Elliot Engel.
Oh wow! Wow, you are really trending against the progressive wing, aren't you?
Yeah, I really like Elliot Engel. He's such a hero to the Syrian cause. He like here in the U.S. He's also a hero for lots of Balkan Muslims. He has just a really great kind of individual streak of standing up for people that other members of Congress just traditionally have not. I think he was a great Foreign Affairs Committee chair. He's extremely experienced. And he, the criticism of him is that he didn't really represent his district. And I think that when it comes to, a vice presidential candidate, Elliot Engel didn't represent his district, because he was not only representing this country, he was representing the world and the way that America should be, the posturing of America and the world. And I just really love Elliot Engel. I would would have loved to see him.
Great choice.
Okay,
Big respect for that one. Big respect for that one. Really
all right,
that.
And Kareem, who's going to win Arizona?
Mark Kelly, without a doubt.
And in the presidential level, Biden.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The Rust Belt.
I would probably say Biden. Yeah.
Okay. North Carolina.
That's a hard one.
I know all the states now.
I can't give you a North Carolina.
Okay,
I can't.
Florida?
Yeah.
Florida?
I can't give you a Florida.
Okay. All right. And Gary Peters, John James.
Gary Peters, without a doubt, he's gonna win.
Okay. And Andrew, I'll do the same with you. Who is your dream candidate for vice president?
Honestly, like I was really racking my brain. I didn't have like a particular if I could choose anyone out there. I think that out of the contenders, probably my top two were Senator Tammy Duckworth from Illinois and Kamala Harris. I think that both of them basically complimented Biden on everything. Definitely were younger and I think could would be a good, future of the Democratic Party. And so, yeah, I think that both of them would have been good choices. I think, Senator Harris, great choice. And I think that, especially in the places where Hillary Clinton, needed to turn out the vote, not necessarily flip votes, but turn out the vote, Milwaukee, Detroit, places like that. Kamala Harris can do that. And, aside from being,
absolutely
senator. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Arizona. So Arizona's going to flip to Biden.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Michigan,
Times are
Wisconsin,
changing.
Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. They're all going to go Biden.
I think Wisconsin's gonna go Trump, but I think Michigan and Pennsylvania, yeah.
Okay. Minnesota's going to remain blue.
Yes.
Okay. And Florida, North Carolina.
I would say North Carolina, I think, is going to go to Biden by a very, very small margin. And the only reason why I say that is because they have a very popular incumbent governor, Roy Cooper. They have a great Senate candidate, Cal Cunningham. Most importantly, they have a very disliked senator in Tom Tillis. And I think that will convince some people to vote Biden, because I don't think there are a lot of people out there who are going to vote Trump and then vote Democrat governor and Democrat, Senate. But Florida, definitely Trump.
Seriously?
Yeah.
So it's going to be a narrow electoral college win then for Biden, right? Because it's Arizona. He's picking up Arizona, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is the key state there, though. 20 votes. You think that's going to go Biden?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, as the only one who's not allowed to take part in your election of the four of us, I have to tell you, a close electoral college race, gets my blood boiling. This is just really exciting to me. For you guys, it's much more. You're part of it. You want the people you vote for to win, and I think it's going to be interesting, and especially I think for everyone who is who feels as a true Democrat, not in a sense of party, but a sense of higher politics. This is just really exciting. And people in the last 4 years, we learned how important it is to have a sense of style and decorum when it comes to politics and to parliament. So I think it's going to be very, very exciting to see the next 2 years, however it will turn out. And we got your clues. You got your opinions on it. I think this is a great step. So I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to take a closer look to Michigan in the next coming weeks. So let's just say thank you, guys. Thank you for taking the time. This has been very, very exciting, and I really hope we'll have you on the show again in the next couple of weeks. There's still some time. I want to talk a lot about these issues, and as you know, we have this gimmick of our guest choosing music. And you guys elected to choose the anthem of the state of Michigan, which we will use as the outro music of today's episode. So I think that's exciting. That's a new way to go to. Thank you for taking the time. Manny, you as well.
Thank you. I do have one more question for Andrew.
Yeah.
John James or Gary Peters?
I think it's going to be Gary Peters.
Good. Right. Let's hope so. Yep. I hope to see you guys soon. We'll be in touch, obviously. And, good luck in the fight for the soul of America.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for coming to NATO. And let's hope we'll hear each other again. So thank you for everybody listening. My name is Benjamin Welling. I'm very happy that we've had all our guests today for another great episode. And tune in next time again when we talk further on European topics and topics of the US and US elections. And I hope we will all hear each other soon again in the time being. Take good care, have a nice day, and good luck. Take care, bye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Michigan, my Michigan, that brings thy war-worn heroes home. Michigan, my Michigan, what welcome from their own proud shore, what honors at their feet will pour, what tears for those who'll come no more. Michigan, my Michigan. A grateful country claims them now, Michigan, my Michigan, a deathless laurel binds each brow. Michigan, my Michigan, and history the tale will tell of how they fought and how they fell for that dear land we loved so well. Michigan, my